Welcome back to another episode of Out of Bounds on the Boom Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today going to be talking about Sean Combs' The Reckoning, aka the Diddy doc on Netflix. So this is going to be spoilers and all that. So if you didn't see it, I guess you don't have to see it. There's apparently a lot of people talking about it who didn't even finish it, which is ridiculous to me. I binged this entire thing yesterday, and this is not going to be a beat for beat breakdown. It's not even a review or anything like that. What I really want to do is talk about certain parts that interested me and certain things, but I really want to follow the conversation that the documentary is asking people to have. And it's not something new, but using a figure that a lot of people know and using some information that people might have not known about, I think the director was able to bring this conversation back to the forefront, which is actually, I think, always important to have, but especially timely given the popular figures that we have in politics and elsewhere these days. So, number one, I want to start with this. For all those people, for all the pushback against the documentary, I think people just really don't know what they're talking about. And number one, you got Marlon Wayans, who voluntarily put himself on the front lines to take a lot of pushback, because he is one of those people who they're ignorant to how these things work, and they just talking, and you didn't even watch it. So everyone's talking about 50 Cent involved is bias, blah, blah, blah. Again, journalism runs closer to, documentaries run closer to journalism than they do movie making. Obviously, it's an art form, but still, there is a process for real documentaries that go through this thing. And so that's number one. But number two, you could look at what evidence is there. Like, obviously 50 has said what his involvement was. The director, Alexandria Stapleton, who is not getting enough credit, not only for this work, but she's gotten high praise for prior work. This isn't some amateur, this isn't some thrown together hit piece. This is something that she actually does. And so when you listen to her, independent of 50 Cent, you hear her talk about his involvement, and it's consistent. I don't know anything otherwise, so I have to go off that. Now, on top of that, even if you don't agree with 50, and there's certain parts in the doc that people are pushing against, they did it the right way. As I said, this runs closer to journalism than anything. So even if you don't believe 50, you don't like him, whatever the case, the fact of the matter is, the actual facts are that they had everything they presented corroborated by a primary source. On top of that, the figure of the documentary, including anybody else that was named in a potential negative light, were given opportunities to either respond, either to be part of it, or to provide additional evidence to the contrary. And they did not. And one thing I find funny with all these recent cases of people saying the black man's getting taken down, which has honestly hurt the advocacy of black men more so than anything. So when people run to defend these celebrities, they never ever point out or question why don't they respond with the receipts. And we ain't talking about I'm in a legal case. We're talking about when you have a chance to respond, why don't you? And so, and I don't mean social media, I mean an official platform. I'm reminded of Shannon Sharp. Everybody wants to defend him. Shannon Sharp and his team was reached out by the attorney, said we have this evidence and this evidence, and we plan on going forward with this claim from my client. We are giving you the opportunity to come to our facility to view the evidence and to dispute it, provide your own counter evidence. They said, no, we're not doing it. And then when they actually go forward with the lawsuit, then it's, oh, these are lies and we don't know what they got. And but they gave you an opportunity to come look at it. And so the director and her crew, again, seasoned documentarians, gave Pete, I just call him Diddy, Puffy, whatever. They gave Diddy an opportunity. They gave other people opportunity, and they declined. The exact same thing happening right now with the Biggie's estate and the people who claim to run it and dispute what's happening in the documentary. They gave you the opportunity to respond, to be part of it, and you did not. And then, of course, if you watched it, you know they gave you the facts of the cases 2 times every episode. And then whenever they talked about the allegations or rumors, they continue to tell you he has not been legally linked or investigated or charged. Like, they did what they were supposed to do. They did it the right way. They did it the journalistic way. They did it tightly in a legal way. So this idea that you don't believe 50 or 50 did it just to be petty, that's fine. But this wasn't created by 50. And another thing that people don't realize is, again, Alexandria was working on this same topic prior to. And when this project started, this was prior to, because people are like, oh, you want to do this because he in jail. This was prior to the trial even happening. Oh, you want to do it because he got indicted. This was prior to that. Oh, y'all want to use the videotape with him and Cassie. This was prior to that tape coming out. So documentaries, especially with something like this, like, because usually documentaries on something like this come out way after the fact. So happening in real time, a lot of things were evolving on the fly. And at the end of the day, people got so many questions. This was a perfect storm. At the end of the day, the Diddy doc was a perfect storm of circumstances. Again, you had a seasoned director who was already working on, or not this project, but was already researched into this topic and was interested. 50 ended up being interested as well. We know they were able to connect, talk about their vision for it, and then decide to go forward with it. Now, on top of the stuff they already had, the Cassie video happens, the indictment happens. Then the biggest part of it, they end up getting the footage that Diddy recorded, or that Diddy had somebody recorded and then he didn't pay for. They were able to get that footage. And so all this is happening while it's being made, and that has the documentary kind of being shaped as it's happening. And so it just was a perfect storm of circumstances for this to come out. And as the director talks about, the biggest issue she had was getting people who wanted to be on the record because they were scared of Diddy. And that the indictment, or the first video and Cassie's lawsuit, then the indictment and, him getting arrested, Diddy getting arrested, that made people more comfortable to come out. But really it was 50 who let them know that this is a legit project. This ain't, just a side little hustle. This ain't, some people thought it was like Diddy's people trying to see who's snitching. 50 let people know, like, because they know how 50 feel about Diddy. He ain't working for Diddy. And so that made people comfortable to come out and be as open as they were. So that was his biggest involvement. And they haven't like said it officially, because Netflix has money, but 50 has money too. So I don't know if 50 paid for the footage all by himself or if it was a half and half, but I'm assuming that was a big contribution to the documentary as well. So all that to say, questioning the legitimacy of the documentary and all that, especially if you didn't see it, is absolutely silly. And it will have you out here saying silly things if you don't understand how these processes happen. Because obviously it started way before Cassie's video, because these things take a long time to make. And everybody again like, oh, they just threw this together because of this news. Bro, that's not how it happened. So anyway, so the first thing that I want to talk about that stood out to me in this documentary, we got to talk about gatekeeping and power dynamics. Now, subsequently, along with everything we learned about Diddy and all these different things, it did serve, especially in that first 2 episodes, as a great history lesson in hip hop. And I should have said up front, I don't claim, I'm not from New York, never been to New York. I don't know all the stories. I'm not a hip hop historian. I wasn't alive in the 80s. I don't know. A lot of this was new to me. I hear a lot of people say this is old. That's cool. There's some things I knew a little bit of, but I'm not a historian, so I got a lot of enjoyment out of that part. And if you didn't know this stuff, it's a great history lesson. If you did, I think it recontextualizes some of it. So we're talking about Diddy and his basically rise to fame, how he got into the industry, his upbringing, all that stuff. And the biggest thing that really you should focus on in this first part that we talk about is the gatekeeping. So there's a part in the documentary where they say at that time in the 80s, when hip hop is really just kind of becoming its thing, there was only 2 ways into like basically the industry. There was Russell Simmons with Def Jam. Was it Def Jam? Whatever. Russell Simmons. And there was Andre Harrell with Uptown Records. And his big act was Heavy D and all that. And I love Heavy D so much. It was good to see him getting some of his flowers with Money on Mount Vernon. So this reminded me of when I was listening to the audiobook of Jada Pinkett Smith's book, because it was free and whatever, and I was just curious what she had to say. And that book was interesting on its own. I don't know if I did an episode talking about that, but anyway, one of the things that stuck with me from listening to her book, and I'm not saying like this book was amazing or anything like that. It was early on in the book because she's talking about her rise too. She talks about how small Hollywood was, or Black Hollywood, if you want to call it that. And there's definitely certain things that I've heard before, like the One at a Time when they were talking about the Black Star and all that. And again, there's plenty of people older than me from different places. You know all this. For me, that was really a aha clicking moment, a revelation moment to say, like, I guess that's true. Because, like, I knew, the racism. We know the typical thing, the discrimination, I should say, the prejudice, the racist systems that kept people out. But after listening to that book and really like thinking about that, and then as I would watch movies and stuff, it's like, yeah, Jada was in all these movies, or this person was in all these movies. And it was like, it was this same group, because Jada talked about how the circle was pretty small. So like most of these parties and most of these events was the same people, Like, even though you think of, California being this big place, or these stars being from these different places and whatever, it was still not that many, especially when y'all making movies in the same area. And so that has stuck with me for a long time. And you can't ignore when you watch any of the classic black movies, it's always the same actors. And they was like, they just did not, they didn't have, they didn't let a lot of people in, and they typecast you to one certain role, and it wasn't a lot. And not only did that create a certain camaraderie amongst people, it created a competition and jealousy. And if you watch the Eddie Murphy documentary, they talked about Richard Pryor feeling that with Eddie Murphy coming up, like he was taking his spot, and they were just conditioned to always be at odds with each other. So I felt this completely as I'm watching the first episode of the Diddy doc. And even without that context, just think about what that is saying. Even if you never, again, you never been to New York, even if you're not a hip hop fan, whatever, you don't even got to think about it in that terms. Just think about it in terms of anything, supply and demand. And so we go to econ class, we could call it whatever we want. Let's just say we need tires on our car. If we need tires on our car and it's 1980 whatever, and there's no Amazon, you can't just order something online. There's only 2 places in the whole area, 50-mile radius of where you live, that sells tires. Like, they're going to have a power dynamic because they have a supply that's very limited, and there is demand for it. And so when you think of it in those terms, or if you want to think of it in practical terms, you pouring water through a pipe and there's only 2 places, 2 exits in that pipe for the water to drain out of. If you flood the pipe, it's going to either burst the pipe. So you can't really put that much through the pipe. You have to limit and gatekeep how much comes in. And so there's a fight to get through those 2 exit drains. So whatever analogy works for you, that's what we had going on, not only in acting, but in hip hop. And who knows how many rappers there were, like true talented ones, who knew how many people had what it took. But all the people that thought they did, those were the 2 ways in. So immediately you already create a situation where you have extreme power dynamics. And I've talked about that before. I'm sure many of you've heard of it before. And, just reflect on your own life, man. Because we see it all the time. And I think that's what especially makes me want to have a conversation. Because it's not really just about Diddy. Diddy is a high level example. But there are many Diddies out there. There are very, very many Diddies out there. They don't have it to that level, but the pattern and the dynamics they're there. So anyway, power dynamics. We got a lot of people wanting to get access to whatever you want to think of it as. Money, most likely, fame, the art, craft, like whatever it is. And you got 2 guys that are based in New York that really run the whole scene. And again, we know what they talk about with Diddy. We've heard some of the stuff coming out with Russell, and I'm sure there's stuff out there about Andre Harrell that I don't know. But either way, it doesn't really matter who they are. When you're put in that position, whether you are that way as a person naturally or you evolve that way, you can be put in a spot where you have the opportunity to really do what you really want to. And so that is what Diddy had to come through in terms of the system at that time in hip hop. And you think about it nowadays, and obviously you still got issues, but the industry, as they say when they talk about music or anything else, is such a cesspool because they were able to gatekeep so much. Now, social media, and again, every day I go back and forth, it's the best or the worst thing to happen. But the internet, social media, that stuff's different. Like, yeah, you need somebody's platform, but you don't need anybody's permission really, or anybody's help to put out your content. So if you Kai Cenat and you figure out whatever it is you want to put out there and people go crazy for it, and you got numbers and you got marketing opportunity, you good. Now, that doesn't mean as a rapper you're going to be the best rapper or anything else, but you can catch an entry point into the industry many ways now. There was only two back then. And so that's what Diddy came through. So then the next thing that you got to talk about. So beware of that. And again, think about it in your own life. Think about it. Like, it could be anywhere, man. It could be a pastor at a small church. It could be the head coach of a popular high school football team. It could be whoever. It could be the president of the Parent Teacher Association or whatever it's called. It could be in so many ways where you have a opportunity for power dynamics and gatekeeping. That's the breeding ground for some of the stuff that happened. So now let's talk about victimhood and trauma and abuse cycles, because this ain't the first time and it won't be the last, but we are having so much dialogue about who's a victim, who's not, why they's talking about it, this, that, and other. And it happens all the time. I've talked about it many times, and I'll say it again because somebody always needs to hear it. Just because you are an adult, or even if you physically capable or whatever, that does not mean that something is easy to do, especially when you have non-physical, non-tangible repercussions that can happen to you. Because sometimes it's going to be physical. It's going to be a physical barrier from you, or between you leaving or doing what you want to do. Sometimes it's going to be financial and otherwise. It's going to be your livelihood. Other times it's going to be psychological, emotional. And people just seem to have a hard time getting past that point. They don't seem to understand that point. And we talk about it over and over again. When we're talking about abuse cycles, people have been traumatized. That especially now, what happens a lot, and we saw it over and over in the Diddy doc, but what happens a lot in our regular lives is that there is an initial attempt. Even if you're being threatened, because usually an abuser will make it very plain and clear that there are consequences for trying to leave. Even with all that, you're going to make some initial attempt. It might not be overt. It might not be calling the cops. It might not be, whatever. It'll be a conversation with somebody. It'll be you mentioning, that whole, oh, I got a friend that's going through this thing. You put out a feeler to see some type of idea, some type of lifeline, some type of reassurance that, yeah, you should leave. And what often happens is they meet some type of resistance or indifference. And again, we saw that over and over in the Diddy doc, where these victims go to somebody that they feel like they could trust or they feel like could help them. And the response is usually, what do you want me to do? I don't want to get in trouble. Oh, or they dismiss it. That's just him being him. Blah, blah, blah. And once that happens and you get shut down, especially repeatedly, it starts to feel like a mountain that you can't overcome. And it's so funny to me because the number of people, now obviously is a little different, but the number of people I talk to about what's going on in today's government and anything, like whether like it's our actual federal government, it's the local policies, whether it's how people are being treated, whatever. And the number of people who are just like, what can I do? Like, hey, there's nothing. It sucks. I don't like it, but I can't do nothing. They feel overwhelmed by the system. And so to look at somebody that's going up against somebody powerful that is their own system and not understand why they can't, do whatever. So that's number one. Number two, the hardest piece of nuance that I just do not, it's just, I don't know how to ever explain to somebody. Two things could be true at once, which is nuance. You can be looking for financial compensation. You can be looking to settle. You can be looking for whatever it is. That does not negate the trauma or abuse or assault that happened to you. In every single case, like Diddy with these black male celebrities, because those are the ones that really seem to bring out the idiot. Now, if it's others, doesn't seem to be that bad. Even though Johnny Depp brought out some idiots too, but that's a different type of idiot. So in any of these cases, you always have somebody saying, why do you want money? Why? Or they're just looking for money, blah, 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 blah. And always I have to say, okay, if that's true, that they're just looking for money, what is it that you want them to be looking for? What is it that you think would, be restorative to indemnify what they went through? Especially when we're talking about, again, abuse and trauma, because most of the time, as I talked about, these things don't come out right away. So when you get statute of limitations, you get all these other rules, it's usually down the line. The only recourse you have is civil. Civil is not criminal. They're not going to put you in jail for it. But on top of that, even if they did, what is it that can be done to be restorative to that person? If you sexually assaulted somebody, if you abused them, if you physically harmed them, whatever, what can be done to change that? If you drugged somebody, assaulted them, took a video of it and played it for people at parties, what can be done to reverse what you did to them? So we get into these areas of victim blaming when we're dealing with abuse cycles, and we try to dismiss what's actually happening. And to be honest with you, in my little bit younger days, I felt the idea of, we gotta speak up because of the fear of being falsely accused. And the more that I've got to live on this earth, I've found that the majority of dudes using that as an excuse to be critical aren't actually worried about false accusations. They're worried about real accusations for the things that they actually did and that they don't believe are problematic. They don't believe it's abusive. They don't believe it's assault or harassment. And so they're like, if what they're saying about this person is a negative, or if they're wrong, then I'm wrong. The exact same way people always talk about, if you're overly concerned about a dude being gay, that means you're gay. They say that because you are so worried about what somebody is doing Or, obviously you feel like you don't want to be a homosexual. Okay, cool. That's your right. But if you feel like the person who is a homosexual is doing stuff that you do or that you like, oh wait, that means that I'm also, and that's why they get so mad about it. So it's the same thing that I found a lot with this. Oh, women be lying. And again, obviously, victimhood and stuff has nothing to do with gender. The way we look at it, talk about it, has to do with gender, but being a victim has nothing to do with gender. And honestly, none of these cycles and what you feel has nothing to do with gender either. So, well, some things to do with gender, I should say. But either way, the question about why now is always going to be the same answer, to where you get to a place where you feel some type of comfort or strength. And as they say, strength comes in numbers. And you get so many people that eye roll when somebody steps out in front. And they're like, okay, whatever. You just trying to take somebody down and get money. No, do you know what it means to step out in front alone? And there's nothing wrong with people who wait for the strength and numbers to come out and feel comfortable to say what they have to say. That's your own journey. But for those that do choose to be the first one to step in front and step into the light, that takes a lot of bravery, especially. And people got to realize, when I talk about this, I'm thinking of examples of students, many students that I worked with when I was a student too as well. Friends that I know, family of friends, acquaintances, co-workers, stuff like that. I could imagine when we're talking about one of the most influential dudes in the entertainment business. And as the documentary shows you, there's very good reason for people to feel like that. Okay? So, let's move on. I want to talk about the psychology of it. Now, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about being a narcissist and narcissism. I don't have a psychology degree. There's many things that I know. There's many things that I've learned, but I'm not going to sit here and miscategorize or, do all those things. I can't tell you the proper terminology, but I can tell you that the behaviors are very familiar. And we can talk a lot about the specific signs of being a narcissist or a sociopath or blah, 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 blah. But I want to start with the childhood development piece. Now, the first episode, in addition to really going through the rise of Diddy as a professional in the industry, it also takes time to go back to his childhood and paint that type of picture. And a lot of it is important. I'm not going to repeat it all because you can watch the documentary if you haven't. But some things that are pointed out, like the absence of his father, but also the reverence with which Diddy grew up hearing about him. Now, I've seen conflicting stories. The documentary didn't go too much into it other than to say that he was selling drugs. A lot of people in the know seemed or claim to be in the know. They say that he was a hairdresser, but he sold drugs on the side. He had some relationships with Frank Lucas. They say Frank Lucas said he never worked for him. They also said he had some relationships, connections with another big dude in New York. I don't know. Again, I ain't never been to New York. I don't know all these gangster stories. But either way, there was a reverence from the mom, and I think that's the most important thing. The mom showed reverence to him in the lifestyle that she felt was worthy of praise. And that is what Diddy took on. That's the type of lifestyle that, you know, you aim for. And for whatever, and I'm sure there's other info out there about what his mom did and how she moved, but we just know that she was physically abusive. That much was said by people that were around. Now, on top of that, many people have taken the documentary, they have interpreted to say that she wanted him to be masculine and to be a certain type of man. Because there was a line that she wanted a prince, she didn't want a princess. And there was people who interpret that, along with other information they know, that Diddy might have been feminine. Now, I'm not going to get into this whole thing about when somebody's gay, how you know they're gay. All I know is people really, even gay people, they really confuse being feminine or presenting feminine as being gay, and it's not always the same thing. So, but in the black community, that very much has been a thing for a long time. So that's very possible. I don't know if that's true, but either way, you're working with a situation where you are developing and you have this image of your dad that is kind of a little bit idolized. You have this lifestyle to be in connections, to be around power. You have potentially an abusive or a physically abusive relationship, which most of us, I guess, can say we had with parents, but it seemed to stem a little further. So you had violence. You had those things that were kind of sewn into you. And then we go into him becoming older, having ambition, wanting to do the things he want to do, but still psychologically really lashing out. Now, we've seen Diddy dance, not just like older Diddy, but like him being like a video dancer and stuff like that. So I don't think you could ever say he had zero talent, but he did not have the talent of the artist. That just wasn't his thing. I mean, we know Diddy now. He ain't the best rapper. We've seen his career. He ain't the best singer. We heard him sing. So that might not have been his talent necessarily, but I don't think you could ever say he had no talent. I mean, he danced. He did his thing. But I think the profile that a lot of people picked up from the doc is that you had a guy who knew how to mimic. And again, circling back to the mom, dressing him to look a certain way, keeping him around certain things so that he could feel a certain way, so that it could, or she could even feel a certain way. This could feel like what his dad was. This could feel like what his dad wanted to be. And so you get Diddy, who knows how to mimic. So he studies. He's watching people. And again, I won't say narcissistic or whatever, but I know people like this. They watch other people, they watch other situations, and they mimic what they learn to be normal. They mimic what they learn to be cool. Or as you get older, they mimic what they believe is successful. And not only do they learn how to mimic that to portray it, but they learn how to mimic it to tell people what they want to hear. And so when you get any type of person that might be whatever, you know, usually something negative, but it could be a serial killer, it could be this, it could be that. These people aren't usually dumb. Now, arrogant, we can get to that later, but these people aren't usually dumb. They know how to read a room. They know how to overly observe so that they can compensate in some other way, and that they can put on the mask of being something they're not. And this is what we saw happen with Diddy. Now, we also have to interject a little bit of this idea of grooming. Now, again, I purposefully did not research Andre Harrell and the stuff he did. I honestly don't even know the allegations against Russell Simmons. But you, just like you have Diddy, you have two guys who are in the position that Diddy eventually gets to, and even worse, because there was less access when they were at the top. And so there are a lot of allegations and thoughts of grooming. Andre Harrell call him a mentee, a protege. He tells the story that Diddy made up a lie so he could move in with Andre, and like a big mansion that he bought, and so Diddy was staying there for a while, and he really raised him up on the game. And then he goes on to do some things that Andre does. So to think that there wasn't the opportunity for the same type of abuse and everything to happen that Diddy did to other people, you'd be, a little bit naive. For sure. There's thoughts that there might have been some grooming going on. Learned behaviors. And again, not a psychologist. There's a lot of discussion about what's innate, nurture versus nature, all of those things. Me personally, I don't think you might have a disposition due to hormones, due to, chemical imbalance, due to whatever. You might have a disposition mentally or emotionally. But I don't believe that is enough to make you into the type of person that Diddy is. And honestly, I'm going to just call him a monster. I'm going to call the type of people like him monsters, because I don't want to use the incorrect, psychological definitions. So you get these monsters, but it's not enough to be born with those type of dispositions. You have to find some learned behavior. So again, we point to the childhood. We point to his relationship with physical abuse and what he thinks of that and how he internalizes that. We point to potential grooming and all of the things that he might have went through himself or seeing happening by the dudes in power, and thinking, okay, this is how I'm supposed to act. But more than that, was way more important, and I don't think enough people talk about this, is his industry knowledge. That's the biggest thing he took away. Now again, since watching this and seeing some other stuff and hearing people talk about it, I've heard some wild rumors, some off the wall rumors about the stuff Diddy did to get to the top. Not even to the top, but to get his foot in the door. And then some of the things he did while he, needed to stay on top. But there is no mistaking whether it was to go from an intern with Andre Harrell and Uptown Records to an A&R, to VP of A&R, or it's him starting Bad Boy and getting the seed money and getting the backing from the industry to start that, or it was him taking Bad Boy and moving to Shine John and all these other things. Whether it's any of those things, there's no denying he had to learn the industry knowledge of how to get things done from somebody else. Andre Harrell, obviously one of the key figures. Clive Davis, one of the key figures. And I'm sure there are many others. But here's the difference between the, the district manager that I might have come through in my career, or the young exec or the assistant principal, or again, it comes in all shapes and sizes on different levels. The difference between those people and what Diddy did, again, is that he got knowledge from the most powerful and influential figures in the country in terms of our economics. So again, I think about the monsters that I know that are exactly like Diddy, and how they learned to navigate the system, and how they had the connections, and how they learned to wiggle their way through. And we're talking about, again, small things: school districts, universities, a college, academic department at a college, at a church, at a fast food chain, like whatever. But when we're talking about on the level of Diddy, you got to realize that times everything by 1,000,000. So Diddy didn't get there alone. He had to learn that industry knowledge. And again, if you watch the doc, it's not just, hey, how to be a music business person. It's how to hide money, so that, because again, Diddy went to Howard for a year. I guess he got kicked out. They said he left, but some people say he got kicked out. He don't got no finance degree. He went on Wall Street, but he learned how to manage a budget in such a way that he could hide money, do shell games. He learned how to falsify information so that he could, again, get away with making money that he's not supposed to, or to show that he had money that he wasn't supposed to. He understood to put certain things in his mom's name to keep liability off him. He understood how to give people false promises and stocks and other things, and when to take it back, how to get it out of there. Now, look, you listen to Diddy from the beginning. Obviously, he listens to other people. It ain't like he a one-man genius. He has a team, but he learned these things. He learned who to talk to, so that he has a lawyer team that can make stuff go away, tell him the right things to say. He learned how to get relationships with local law enforcement and local like lawyers and other things, DAs, whoever, so that when he was in trouble, he knew who to talk to cover things up. He learned which people were influential when it came to the gangster stuff, whether it's the actual gangs, whether it's the mafia, whatever. He understood who was moving drugs, who was the killers, who was into these different things. And he learned how to get in contact with them, how to build a relationship with them, how to keep them satisfied and loyal. And again, it ain't the documentary's job to go through every single detail, but you look at what he was able to accomplish. This ain't no regular, ordinary, just, hey, I made a lot of money and I'm out here wilding. No, you get to the level of a monster when you have successfully learned the entire system, the ecosystem of which you are trying to dominate. And again, it might just be, it might be your local chapter of whatever organization. It might be something as big as, the state finance department, whatever. Diddy was doing this at a global entertainment level. He learned the industry knowledge from other people that allow him to really use the system the way he wanted to and truly become a monster. So the idea that he does to people some of the things that were done to him is possible. he does to people, some of the things he saw Andre Harrell and them do to other people, it's possible. They give that one story. Well, I'll get back to that. It's all possible as far as the grooming, but to me, that's not the biggest piece, because Diddy, as the documentary shows, he's had that inclination and disposition to be into some stuff his whole time. It didn't just come out of nowhere. He had that. And the grooming piece, I'm not denying, but the biggest thing that people got to realize is he got the knowledge of the industry. Not really, I don't even want to say the industry. He got the knowledge of the capitalist system. He understood how to get into the rooms, how to talk to people, who to talk to, so that he could run things the way he wanted to when it was his time. Now, to go back to a little bit of the psychology for those that remember. Actually, I don't think this was in the doc. This is something that I heard afterwards. They said in the documentary, or someone said, that Diddy had called him into the office, said, hey, come in, just so he could see that Diddy was getting fellatio from some girl. And it works on a couple levels. Now, when you hear the other stories, it works on 4 or 5 more levels. But one of the stories that was important was that allegedly Andre Harrell used to do that. And that they say he used to do that. He used to get, fellatio in his office by somebody. Now, did he call people in just to see it? Maybe. But there was a whole nother story with Kim Porter, the assistant, and blah, 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 blah. But somebody came in, saw him, and they tried to give her a car. And eventually she had to get fired, whatever. So there's a lot of psychology there. That's something that I've seen done. I talk a lot about adulthood. I've seen this stuff go back to high school, junior high. Not necessarily with monsters, but with the way we are taught in our culture and our society at that time as black men, as black people, and what was cool, what was a symbol of power, what was a symbol of whatever. Yes, you've seen that stuff. You think about Don't Be a Menace, or not Don't Be a Menace, but South Central, whatever it's called. I don't even remember. I just saw that recently. But what was it? Old Dog, Lorenz Tate. What was he doing? He kept trying to play this tape of him killing this dude at parties. Now, that's a step up, obviously. But what was they talking about Diddy doing with the first victim? Playing videos of him having sex with her at parties. Now, ask yourself, do you know anybody, or maybe yourself, and again, that's why this documentary makes people uncomfortable. Do you know people that have done that? Absolute, not at parties, but because obviously I didn't grow up in the 80s, so by the time I'm in high school, whatever, high school, not really, you weren't really able to do that much, but you did have cameras, like legit cameras. But going into college, though, by that time, yeah, you got video on your phones and pictures. Obviously, you've always had pictures and all types of stuff. So, did people try to do that? Yes. Why? We could dive into that another time. But that is one part of the psychology. So, when we talk about grooming, when we talk about doing things that have nothing to do with the task at hand, it has everything to do with how you're trying to manipulate somebody. We see it all in this Diddy doc. Now, I didn't say this at first, but I already knew it probably gonna be 2-3 parts of this because there's a lot to dive into. And so I think this was a good primer to start the conversation. And we'll get more into some of the other things because I still want to talk about the actual hip hop side of it with the Tupac and all that. But the beginning of this conversation is that we look at the patterns and the behaviors of Diddy. We hopefully think about the monsters that we know. And honestly, hopefully you're not, but maybe you are a monster. But I don't think so. I don't think it's a ton of monsters. Because monsters do terrible things when they feel they can get away with it. Now, again, we'll talk about Diddy and arrogance, because obviously when you accomplish what Diddy accomplishes and you have what he has, you can get to a place where what you think you could get away with is unlimited. But in terms of my level, and I've said this before, so this ain't new, but you might be a first time listener. I was sexually harassed by a man. Wasn't assaulted, wasn't physically touched, but I was sexually harassed by a man who was absolutely a monster and to the T fits the patterns and behaviors of what I saw with Diddy, in the patterns and behaviors of what I've seen with other monsters. And again, Diddy's at the high end. When we're talking about this person I know, they would do it where we're at the space where they worked because they knew all the players. They knew exactly where the skeletons were hid. They knew exactly who they could leverage. They knew who was weak. They knew who not to mess with. They do what they think they could get away with. So you think about these monsters and how they operate. And hopefully that's what this first part of this discussion and the Diddy doc really kicks off. Because I really wanted not to expose, but to really add perspective and context to some of the things we see every day. And so that people could not only recognize the monsters that are around them, recognize your role in enabling them, recognize the victims and what they might be going through and how you could support them. So that's the first part of this conversation. It ain't scripted. I got notes of what I want to hit, but it ain't scripted. So we'll see what we talk about, and then we'll see how many parts we do. But for this first part, I just want to kind of introduce these, I think, major themes of the documentary. This idea of being able to be put in a position to gatekeep something and the power dynamics it creates. Trauma, abuse, being a victim, childhood development, and the psychology that happens with a person over time and what they're born with. And then this idea, which I think is the most important idea out of everything in this doc, is that the grooming and the industry knowledge play hand in hand. That knowledge of what Diddy acquired is the most important. I mean, they always say knowledge is power. And education is this and that. And obviously I believe in that. But people don't really realize why they say that. Especially in America. They say it because these systems were not created to, do XYZ, but the access to those systems was purposefully limited to certain people so that the resources and wealth could be limited to certain people. And it's gotten to the worst part of today. But a guy like Diddy, an unlikely guy like Diddy, an unlikely guy like Russell Simmons, Andre Harrell, were able to tap into those spaces, get the knowledge that allowed them some of that success. And Ironically, that is the exact reason everybody admires them. That is the exact reason people defend them. Because vicariously idolizing, whatever it is, those are black men or black women that were able to do what feels impossible. So that gives me hope. That's inspirational. And that is weaponized against you. Diddy says this at the not the very beginning. No, it was later in the doc when he's talking with his son, and they're trying to get the statement from one of the girls from Dirty Money, and they're just like, yeah, if she says this, then we got the whole angle of being a black man trying to be taken down by the system. Like, they literally plan to use that, and that's literally what people sit in comments repeating, parroting, to defend this man. And many men like him, or other people, other monsters. Again, monsters ain't just men. So those are my important takeaways, and we will continue discussion. So go to the comment section, let me know what you think. Share it around, get the conversation started, thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for going out of bounds.